Welcome to the Parenting on the Spectrum show with board-certified behavior analyst and infant-toddler development specialist, Theresa Alexander-Inman. Parenting on the Spectrum dives into real stories, challenges, and triumphs, offering invaluable insights and support for families on your unique journey. Let's get into the episode.
Welcome. Today, I am so thrilled to have as my guest, Ms. Shermin Kruse. She is an author. She's the author of Stoic Empathy. She has so many other titles, but we'll just have her jump in and share with us what is Stoic Empathy. Welcome, Cher.
Hi, it's such a pleasure to be on Parenting on the Spectrum this morning. Thank you so much for having me, Theresa.
Oh, it's my absolute pleasure to have you, ma'am. When I heard Stoic Empathy, I'm like, doesn't it seem like a contradiction, like being stoic and showing empathy at the same time? So share with us.
All right. Yeah, I'm happy to jump right in there. Okay, so let's see. A great starting story is one from my childhood. So I was born in Iran, and for those who might not be as well versed in Iranian recent history as I am, the Iranian Revolution happened in 1979. I was born in 77, so I was about 2 when the revolution occurred. Then, shortly thereafter, there was a war that was declared by our neighbor, Iraq. So Iran was not just immediately in the throes of post-revolutionary conduct, but it was also coping with electricity shortages, water shortages, and missile attacks. By the time we left Iran in 1988, there was up to 6 missile attacks a day into the capital city. About 1 million people died. There was about 40 million people living in Iran at the time. So it was a very substantial conflict. And then again, remember, we're in immediate post-revolution. So the government is as strict as it's going to get because it's essentially forcing people to adopt habits they never had before. Mm-hmm. And that's the environment in which we live. And here's the story. The story is, and I don't even remember it was such a typical night that I don't remember what night it was or what season it was, but it was 3 in the morning, like 2:33 in the morning. And I was asleep, and my twin younger sisters were asleep, and my parents were asleep. And the red alert sirens went on. And the red alert sirens are there to warn you that there's impending missile attacks. Mm-hmm. And, my parents have to get up fast, right? They have to judge by the pitch of the sirens, whether they have enough time to make it into the basement, to the bomb shelter, or just enough time to just go under a door frame. Door frame, not going to save you from a missile attack. But being away from windows, being in a structurally safe area, that's an important, strategically significant location to be in your house. And so they have to utilize their empathic awareness of their children and their children's emotional needs to find that sort of inner master, if you will, of control. They have to act swiftly, concisely, wisely, right? And they can't lie you can't lie. I mean, you have to be transparent. There's missiles raining down, right? It's not something you can necessarily hide from the children, but it is something that you can protect them from emotionally. So all of those nights that I spent in my parents' arms in those doorways, I don't once remember feeling traumatized. I remember being really stressed. I remember being really tired. I remember being sick and tired of this. I remember being annoyed. I remember being aggravated and being afraid, but I don't remember being traumatized. And that's significant, right? Its impact on my brain is significant. And the fact that my parents were able to do that, they were able to show up like literal superheroes because of their empathic awareness of me. And they weren't like that all the time. I mean, my mom could be yelling her head off at some guy in the bazaar that day because she doesn't maintain her cool all the time, but she did when she had to. And I grew up in this environment, and we've all been there. We've all had situations where when we had to, we showed up as our most controlled and composed self. And when I say we had to, I mean because we were responsible for other people. Yeah. And so my quest and my question was, how do I take this capability that exists in my parents and in most people, honestly, and turn it into a an intentional habit that's at my whim and at my control. How do I utilize my awareness of a situation and the people in this situation, including the ones who are hostile and the ones who are dependents, right? How do I utilize that awareness to find control rather than lose control? And so that's really the beginning of my journey. I was a child in Iran.
Wow, that is such a profound statement, finding control versus losing it, because so often we lose control and then have to reel back and recover from it.
Yeah.
So you got there because your parents imitated and modeled this behavior for you, imitated the behavior that your parents modeled. But how, as a young child, for you to have the awareness and to think, oh goodness, and to and not to be traumatized from this, because most people, I mean, I dare say most people probably would be traumatized because it's an ongoing thing.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So was that the protective factor for you, your parents response to this?
Yeah. So this is such an interesting question. So first of all, there probably is some sort of underlying level of trauma that we all experienced as a people, but you could see, and I could see even as a child, you could see the people whose eyes had gone glossy and who had essentially just lost it, right? You could tell who was with it and who was, as the British would say during World War II, keeping calm and carrying on. Right? There's a difference between those two groups. That doesn't mean those who are keeping calm and carrying on are in effect unaffected. It just means they're hyperfunctional, right? And yes, a lot of that was because my parents were my role models. They were my guidance. They were the ones I listened to. And especially remember, we're in post-revolutionary Iran. So we're in an environment where who you are at school and who you are at home are two very different people. And you can't show up like this new thing that people are talking about, Mel Robbins, Brene Brown, show up authentically. It's really great. You can't do that. If you live under an oppressive government, you'll get killed. I mean, you could, but then you'll get killed. So you have to accept that possibility or accept imprisonment or accept punishment or whatever it is. And my people are incredibly brave people. And half the time they're out in the streets showing up as their authentic selves and getting imprisoned, getting killed, getting maimed. But the other half the time they're protecting their kids. And I don't blame either choice. I completely get it. I'm not in a position to cast judgment on either choice. And so showing up authentically is not really an option. So you just did what your parents told you to do. That's what you did. That kept you safe. And it kept you as real and grounded as possible in what you were being told is the real world versus the fake world that's being presented to you. And you had to just rely on your parents. What else are you going to do, right? In that environment, you can't listen to your teachers. You can't listen to your spiritual advisors. You can't listen to governmental advisors. You can't follow the rule of law except to pretend to follow it so you don't get in trouble. So it's just family. Family was your everything growing up. It was your guidepost. So I think the way that they modeled themselves for us had a really substantial buffer for us between the incredible violence and the impact being felt.
Yeah. There are two things that they say for, to help with trauma, right? To overcome it, to deal with it, that feeling of safety and feeling of love. How difficult must that have been for your parents to make you feel safe in that environment when you're getting up in the middle of the night and, having to scramble, deciding, okay, bomb shelter or doorway.
Right. And not just that, but also living in immediate post-revolutionary Iran where, yesterday you didn't have to wear a headscarf. And today there's a large morality police guard with a Russian style assault rifle threatening you and your child for not having a proper headscarf, right? So it was also that daily living that was such a big part of the experience. And then add to it just normal things that come with war, bread lines, right? You don't have as much, you have rationed heat in the winter, rationed cool in the summer. We did not have running hot water. This is not like a hot shower was not an option that was available to us growing up. And so you add to it all of that and all of the hardships that come with that make every day just that much more complex and that much more difficult. How did they do it? They did it because they had to do it. And when they didn't have to do it, they didn't do it. So when they could just lose it, they would. And so that was what I needed to learn. I needed to learn how to find that control, taking the example of my incredible parents during those moments of strife, but really trying to live and extend it to live more like a general or a colonel or a monk, right? A meditative monk, because they have that control all the time. And I've seen it. I've studied with some of these monks before, and they're unbelievable. So I know it's possible. I know that you can, and I know that my parents could turn it on. There was a switch, you just flipped it on. So I just had to try to figure out, and by the way, the journey continues. Just because I wrote the book doesn't mean I've concluded the journey. I make mistakes, I fall all the time. Mm-hmm. Nevertheless, there's a path now that I'm on, and this is the path of finding that control in conjunction with a kindness and an awareness and a caring, because that actually helps you get the control. It also enables you to be a proper human being, because without caring, you are just not going to be able to have any real life as a human, any real relationships, anything that lasts beyond a momentary exchange.
Yeah, that is the foundation, isn't it? Right? It all starts with love and care.
Yeah. The way I think about it sometimes is I never studied medicine. I went into law. But I often wonder what would have happened if I had become a trauma surgeon. I actually think about that. What would happen if I'm a trauma surgeon in the ER and a patient is rolled in with 7 bullet wounds? But let's say the patient is 7 years old and has been shot by their father. Okay. This is a horrible situation. It's heartbreaking. But I can't stand there and be paralyzed by heartbreak. I'm the trauma surgeon, right? In this hypothetical, I have to operate on this child and heal him. And I have to do it with care, not just to understand his anatomy, but to make sure I don't release him back into that household. And so, and if I don't have that, if all I do is patch up the bullet wounds and send him back out, I'm really not doing my job as a physician. Right. And so I think about that scenario all the time, about the significance of combining emotive control with awareness and caring, even if the awareness is of a hostile force, right? Just being aware, being able to predict, being able to understand human emotions, and having that, which is so much of what empathy is, right? And then if it's my own kid being wheeled in and I'm not the surgeon, I am allowed to be heartbroken. I have that luxury. The surgeon doesn't have it. And it's important to be able to recognize that based on your duty at any given time and to modulate it.
Right. And then, so as a parent, you've got to be both. You've got to have those moments where you can be empathetic, but then in times of danger where your child is being threatened or you're being threatened, you have to turn that on.
Yes. And how many parents out there, by the way, have been in those situations where, I don't know, your kid's at a play date and gets a head wound. We all know how head wounds bleed as parents, right? We've been around the block. It might not even be a really serious wound, but there's a lot of blood and the kid is freaking out. Or in a situation where we suddenly have to swerve in traffic because we have our kids in the car and there's some psychopath on the road, right? We've all been in those situations where the proverbial stuff hits the fan and we suddenly have to, it's not just about being with your kids under a doorway during a missile attack. We have these situations as parents all the time. And then as they get older, it sort of moves from the physical to the emotional, right? Suddenly they're heartbroken, or suddenly they're dealing with a friend who suffered an overdose. And this is, or was cyberbullied, right? Mm-hmm. And so we have to kind of do the same thing. Show up, controlled, aware, caring, right? And simultaneously raise kids who can walk that line. We want them to be able to be controlled and caring. They're not going to be able to do it when they're 5. But they're going to be better at 10 than they were at 5. Mm-hmm. And hopefully better at 15 than they were at 10. And hopefully better at 20 than they were at 15, and so on and so forth. And hopefully we can do that for them so that When they're out and we're not around, which is increasingly frequently as they get older, they do this thing. I keep telling them not to do it. They keep getting older. It's really obnoxious. And so they keep getting older. They keep being out of my sight for longer and longer periods of time. They gotta learn how to do it. I gotta teach them that while being that for them.
And how do you teach that? Because, there are parents out there who are like, okay, it's easy for you to say, yes, I know you've been through all of this and life's been rough, Cher, but how do I teach my child? How do I get there so I can teach my child?
I love it. I love that question so much. And what I would say to each and every parent is, first of all, you've done it before. Here's what you've done before. When your kid was learning how to ride their bike and they fell off and they scratched their knee, you didn't say, suck it up, kid, get back on the bike. No, you cleaned the wound, you put a Band-Aid on it, you probably kissed it all better. But then you said, get back on the bike. You didn't say, hey, I'll just ride your bike for you for the rest of your life. Like, that's just not something you did. So we just have to convert that for the same thing in emotional pain. Just as long as we do that, we show that empathy, we show that care, we also show that resilience, and we show that overcoming. We model it in ourselves, and we encourage them to do it. You do have to get back on the proverbial bike, even when it's not just a bike. It's your AP history course, or it is your challenging but rewarding friendship, or whatever it might be, right? Whatever it is that is of value to you and your life, just because there's been a fall and a trip and a scratch, it doesn't mean you can get off. Now, it doesn't mean you have to give. I mean, obviously we have to be careful and make these judgments properly, but I think every parent actually knows how to do it. I think it's just about extending it from the smaller problems to the bigger problems and giving them that faith and that trust to get back on that bike.
Got it. So well said. Now, my thing is there's the parent who they're having, so a parent has an autistic child and they're having all of those back to back to back to back to back, right? It seems like and it's not every day, but it feels like it's every day, How do they get there? How, and you use the example, you've given them the wrong colored cup, it's traumatic. It's like, oh my gosh, I can't drink, or you gave me the milk cup and now and you put juice in it, or whatever it is. How do we navigate that for them? Like, how do we help them navigate?
Yeah. So that's going to depend on your child and where they are on the spectrum and what type of other treatment and medical care they're receiving. And I would obviously say, rely on your practitioners to assist you in those circumstances. But without a doubt, no matter what situation you're in, the first step is for you to take a breath, right? Because that's frustrating for you. That's aggravating. And it's okay for you to say, that's aggravating to me. I mean, it's okay to actually experience the emotion, but you cannot allow it to impede your ability to parent. Whatever it is the solution is with your particular child, which we'll get to in a minute, first begin with you. How do I do what I need to do to approach this situation with wisdom and to show up? And I always say, I'm no guru. I don't tell people what to think or who to be. You want to show up as the person you want to be. How do I show up as the person I want to be rather than be controlled by my own momentary spike in anger or frustration or anxiety or whatever, fear or whatever it might be? How do I better become the person I want to be in a situation where clearly I'm dealing with something that is challenging? This is not easy. And what do I have to do? For a lot of people, it's daily meditation. It's take a breath. A lot of the Stoic training, a lot of the items that are in my book have to do with habituating yourself to discomfort. Because the more accustomed you get to being in a state of discomfort, and by the way, that could just be an ice bath. It could be, negotiating for that extra shot of vanilla in your cappuccino in the morning or for free or whatever it is. And so whatever it is that's uncomfortable for you, putting yourself in those situations so that you can habituate what's it like when I'm uncomfortable. I'm used to it. I know how to collect myself in that situation because I've trained for it. And whether it is a breath, or whether it is a count, or whether it is just a reminder, any of us could die at any moment. We could get hit by a bus and die. Not up to us. This too is a gift. It is something that I am being given. What do I do with it? Right? And also, depending on your child, whether or not they can learn to modulate their behavior in response to the wrong color cup depends on their medical prognosis, on the type of medical care you have available, on the type of therapeutic treatments, and on their condition, right? It's quite possible that that is beyond your control. And if it is beyond your control, and this is called the duality of control in ancient Stoicism, the idea, which is really more of a dichotomy, is I have to at any given time recognize what I can control, which always is my own breath, which always is my own mood, my own judgments, my own thoughts, right? Maybe not the temporarily one that jumps in, but overall, right? And what I can't control, which might be whether or not I can teach my child to adapt to receiving the wrong color cup. It might be, but it might not be. And that is up to you. It's not up to me, right? It's up to you to decide how you want to approach that situation. And if your decision in that moment is, this is beyond my control, I'm just going to de-escalate, diffuse, and create a calm situation for my child so that we can both have a better day. Or, hey, this is an opportunity for me to continue his or her therapeutic treatment and allow them to habituate to this or whatever treatment it is they're on, right? Again, not up to me to tell you what that is. And so that's up to you to decide at any given moment. I just want to give you the tools you need to make that decision rationally at the time from a place of logic, wisdom, and love, as opposed to a place of anger, frustration, anxiety, which you might be feeling justifiably, right? You just don't want to be pushed by that or pulled by that or put into a box by that. It's okay to experience it. We just don't want to be controlled by it.
Right. Yeah, because then there's usually regret afterwards when we respond from that place.
We've all been there, and it's so funny, Theresa, that you talk about the regret, because that's such a big component of it too. Let me tell you something. You will mess up. You will make mistakes, right? And so having a coping mechanism for yourself, what do I do when I make a mistake? Mm-hmm. How do I habituate myself to giving myself grace, recovering from it, learning from it, so I can be a little better next time? The mistake is done. It is gone. It is no longer in my control. What can I do now? What is ahead of me, right? And sort of creating that dichotomy of control also within yourself, not just you and the outside world, but also within yourself. I messed up. Guess what? You're human. You're going to mess up. What now? What's next? Right? Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, we're here not because we're perfect, but because we have messed up and we've learned some lessons along the way that we can share.
Yes, 100%. So one of the things that the book does, the first half of the book is really about empathic awareness. It helps you learn how to read the room. Mm-hmm. The second half of the book is about stoic control. And as we already talked about earlier, it's really about how those two things tie in together. And they're both exceptionally important. But really what I'll tell you guys is, as parents of kids on the spectrum, or those who are parenting on the spectrum, and even if you have a spouse who's on the spectrum, I really think that can be a significant issue as well, especially because you have to co-parent together. And so think about first, where's the line of control? And by the way, that line doesn't have to be fixed, right? Because if I'm in the right type of treatment or therapy, that line can be mobile. Mm-hmm. But I still need to decide where it is in this moment, right? So that I can release what I can't control. It is beyond my control. I have to release it. Here's what I can do, either to expand my line of control or within my current area of control. Here's what I can do. And you can always decide to show up as your best self. And if you didn't 5 minutes ago, decide to do it next time and move on.
Yeah, don't hold on to that because it is so damaging. And you actually miss life when we're holding on to,
Mhm. I
oh, I
know.
messed up and I can't believe and blah,
I
blah,
should have
blah.
said this. I could have done that. Yeah.
Yes,
It's
yeah.
so human though, it's so human. It's only because y'all care so much. And if you didn't care, it wouldn't bother you. But you do care. And it's okay to feel that way too. But it does help you if you train yourself out of it. Convert the caring into next steps, from regret into lessons learned, right? That doesn't mean you don't look back. It doesn't mean you don't evaluate. It doesn't mean you ignore your errors or your mistakes, right? All it means is you forgive yourself and you try to do a little bit better next time, because the past is gone.
Yes.
Yeah.
Wow, what a great way to end. Thank you so much, Sharon. It's been awesome having you. I've enjoyed our conversation.
Me too.
And yeah, and to our audience, thank you so much for watching. Please, maybe you want to watch this a couple of times so you can really get it so that you can parent with confidence.